Hi, hope you've had a good lunch break. We're going to be moving into our ocean governance track. There are plenty of seats at the front here, so if anybody would like to move forward, please do come to the front. It'll help us create a bit more of an atmosphere for the conversation. So don't be shy about doing that. It would be great if some of you could move forwards. Now, before bringing on the panelists, just a few announcements to tell you about. As you know, the Prime Minister is coming later on today, and so the security arrangements are extremely stringent for that. We would ask you, please, after this session, please don't bring any food or drink into this room, unless you want to be eaten by a very vicious dog, I believe, because it sends the sniffer dogs crazy. So please, no food and drink. If you have a small bag, that's fine. If you have a backpack, it would be great if you can to leave it in one of the coach rooms, because that will facilitate the task of getting through the security checkpoints. And also during this afternoon, some of you will have booked sessions with the how-to workshop, so please keep that in mind, and if you have a session booked, remember to go to that session if you could. Okay, so for our session on collaboration to increase momentum for ocean action, please could I invite the panelists please to join me. Hi, welcome. Good. Welcome. Hi again. Hi. So I'm delighted to welcome Pascal Lamy, European Starfish Mission, Daniela Fernandez, both of whom you've seen before, from the Sustainable Ocean Alliance, Louis Lambrechts from the Oceana Azul Foundation, and Alfredo Quiron from the World Economic Forum. And remotely, I hope we have the connection with Peter Thompson. Peter, welcome. Peter, unfortunately, has COVID and couldn't be with us, but is with us remotely by very good connection as far as I can see. So, Peter, that's great that you're able to join us. Thank you for even dressing up for the occasion. Perhaps I would start with you, because this is all about collaboration from where you sit as the Special Envoy from the UN Secretary General for the Ocean. Incredibly busy year for you of summitry, including, of course, the UN Oceans Summit in Nice. Could you put that in context for us? Because collaboration is at the heart of all of that, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Look, first of all, hi to the panelists. Sorry I can't be with you, but such is life. And I did want to thank the Nippon Foundation and The Economist and Oceana Azul Foundation for putting all this together, and to, again, apologize to them for not making it. But it's very timely. The timing of this meeting has been worked out very carefully. It fits into an exacting calendar in 2025, which runs from Tokyo now through to our ocean conference in Busan, and then through, of course, to the UN Ocean Conference itself in Nice in June, and then on to the IUCN WCC Congress in Abu Dhabi in October, and then to that great lighthouse at the end of the year, the UNFCCC COP30, and we know what the havens are. We have the lighthouses along the way. We just have to make sure that we stick to the course, and I'm sure we will. So that's why this meeting is such an important one, setting us off on that course. As I always say, we cannot do this alone. The UN Ocean Conferences have always been very inclusive. That's been their hallmark. We bring in business, we bring in the academia, science, youth, we bring in the NGOs, and of course the member states who form the conference. So we really welcome everybody to get on board with this and create the action that we need. I know you've got a lot of very worthy panelists there, and I'm going to be given another chance to speak, so I won't say too much now. other than to say that we've got less than 3 months, and so we really have to make this next couple of days really count in Tokyo, and I'll be following it very closely. I believe in hope and progress, and to make progress, you've got to lay down the foundations, and we're laying them down here, and I'd like to expand on that a bit more later in our discussions over the next hour or so.
Thank you, Peter. Well, just one quick follow-up for you on this. So, you know, as you mentioned, it's the third one, it will be in Nice. What is different about this time, and what do you hope to achieve specifically at this conference than compared with the previous two?
Well, the journey that we've been on from that first UN Ocean Conference in New York through to the second in Lisbon has been, I think, a step up in ocean action always. And so I do expect us to have increased acceleration coming out of Nice. I personally am particularly interested in the financial area. I don't want to be in a position on the fourth UN Ocean Conference in 3 years' time to be told, oh, we've just got no money to put all these good ideas into place. We have to sort out the finance, and hopefully we'll make some big strides forward in Nice on that. And I'm sure Pascal Lamy has got more to say on that. I think the science is also so important, and that's why I'm so happy that the One Ocean Science Congress is being held the week before in Nice, so that science can tell us what we need to be doing, because we must trust science on this.
Wonderful. Well, that's a great segue to Pascal. I should have said before starting that this session is sponsored by the Oceana Azul Foundation, so very grateful for that. Thank you. Pascal, Nice Finance, a good segue to you, I think. What are you expecting from this year?
Well, let me first, we're looking at this cooperation, how to improve our action cooperatively. Zoom in from what Peter said. I mean, he has a sort of worldwide picture, and he's trying, and I think quite successfully, to bring these countries, these people, these companies together. What we've done for the last 5 years within the EU, sort of continental Zoom, is a process which started with this starfish mission, which is a part of EU research and innovation with roughly €1 billion for 10 years on science and innovation. That created a roadmap done by experts on how could we, by 2030, regenerate the EU hydrosphere. So, stage one was an expert job that then was translated into a series of EU Commission initiatives. And then came stage two, which was transforming this expert job into a public thing, raising public awareness on a much larger scale than the normal bubble to which experts address. And this was done with Oceano Azul by a think tank I'm closely connected with in Brussels, which is the Jacques Delors think tank in Brussels. They have an ocean expertise, which in a way partnered with the Azul Foundation. And then we lifted the thing on the occasion of the European elections on a much larger political public visibility. And then it led to stage three, which is now the European Ocean Pact, which is part of the next 5 years work program by the Commission, the Council, and the Parliament, and which will, in a way, retail through a series of programs, action legislations, the 5 initial legs of the starfish: science, governance, protection, stopping pollution, and the blue economy. And where there is a direct connection between this sort of stage process, and that's 5 years, basically, and Peter knows that well, is that the part of the EU will come to Nice with its European Ocean Pact. So the Nice conference has helped creating a sort of time horizon for mobilizing energy, and a part of that on the blue economy will be dealt like the Science Congress, which Peter mentioned, during 2 days before Nice in Monaco, which we call the Blue Economy and Finance Forum, which is about scaling up successful existing blue economy investment, starting from a wealth of initiatives, which we have collected through the BEF website, and which part of which will be displayed as that's the way to go. So that's roughly where we see these things taking place through partnership and cooperation, but the lesson remains that at some stage you need a political endorsement. I'm a big believer in bottom-up and non-state-based coalitions, but on issues like this, you at some stage need the political direction, and that's where we are now in the EU. And again, this is thanks to a lot of these initiatives.
Yeah, well, obviously you need both, and the more you have top-down, the more you have bottom-up, they reinforce each other. Daniela, you're more at the bottom-up level, I guess. Tell us a little bit about the collaboration, sort of collaboration partnerships that you see happening.
At Sustainable Ocean Alliance, we have built the largest network of young ocean leaders. We have over 10,000 young people in over 186 countries. And so what that means is that we have young people who are not just feeling the anxiety of the climate crisis, right? But they're actually rolling up their sleeves and actually taking action, whether it be by doing mangrove reforestation or planting coral reefs or creating amazing initiatives on the ground. They're also working in advocating for different policies and initiatives. And I think what is so important in this is that we're able to translate what young people are feeling, thinking, what they're experiencing, what they're learning, and take that to forums, right? Such as UNOC, such as the Our Ocean Conference. And we have been doing that for the past 10 years now, and giving young people a voice to not only represent an entire generation, but to truly come to the table with solutions, with ideas, with a way forward. And I do believe that that is the key element around youth engagement, right? Is like, how do you give young people the opportunity to say, we have inherited this mess that we're all in, and yet we are now empowering you to actually take a stand and be able to use your own imagination, your own willpower, and your own knowledge. I mean, a lot of our youth also come from, very local indigenous areas where they're also translating, right, to their elders as to what they're learning, right? So I think coming from these two worlds of being able to translate what's happening in the global policy agenda and then bringing that to their local communities, at the same time bringing that local knowledge up, it's such a critical conversation that wasn't being had in the past, but now we have this capacity to build this movement.
And do you see that sort of mobilization, if you like, do you see it actually leading to some initiatives, actions, ventures that are actually then have the potential to grow into something bigger?
Yes, I'll give you 2 examples. One of them is that we have funded over 480 microgrant solutions. So we give microgrants between 1,000 to 15,000 USD. And these may seem like small check sizes, but in reality, these check sizes go a really long way.
Transformative in the context.
Transformative, absolutely. I mean, I just met one of our grantees here today, in which we transformed their solution, which is, taking, using different elements to replace plastic, right? So I think that's really exciting. And then another example is we do a lot of work in protection of our deep sea. So we actually send a delegation of young people to the International Seabed Authority every single year, and we're the only youth-led organization to have observer status in that event. And that means that we actually have been able to have young people convince ministers and presidents and heads of state to change their vote to protect their deep sea. And I think those are the types of examples that we want to see then, move to the plastics treaty, to MPAs and so forth. Peter's smiling.
Alfredo, tell us about your collaborations and cooperations. I guess that's a bit of a core of what you do as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me start by saying a few things about collaboration in itself, just to put in context why an organization like the World Economic Forum exists. Collaboration is hard because timelines sometimes don't match, expectations, incentives, approaches. And so it's hard to get people to the table to agree on things and then to follow through. And the actual mission of the World Economic Forum is the institution for public-private collaboration. And so we have developed this model for over 50 years now, in which really everything that we do is around getting people at the table, talking the difficult things, and coming up with, okay, what are we going to do together out of this? And so today I want to focus on two particular examples, because I think that it will be great to see that, especially in these times when we see so much uncertainty around public funding in so many of the areas where these collaborations have been very impactful, it's very important that we also look at the private sector as one of the key partners to get these collaborations to scale. And so I'll give you two concrete examples. One is on the seafood sector. We have been supporting, in very close collaboration with the World Resources Institute, something that we call the Namibian Ocean Cluster. And that is, we got together most of the hake industry in Walvis Bay and asked them, hey, are there any opportunities for you to work together on some of the products that you are not bringing to shore and that are both causing environmental harm because you are throwing the heads and the viscera to the ocean even before you land them, and that you definitely have markets for fertilizers and fish heads in other parts of the country that are not making it to there because it's much more valuable to just bring the fillets to some extent. After a few years of work and a lot of work to get the government also enabling this type of collaboration, it finally was created. The Namibian Ocean Cluster is a thing now. It has 7 members from industry and a few others from around civil society and some of the government agencies. And they are really going hard at, okay, how do we create the value chains for some of these things? How can the government incentivize that these products actually make it to market? So that's one very...
And is it happening that these products are being, or is it still in the development phase?
So the development phase still, but with a lot of support. And so it's moving forward. We are very excited to continue seeing the progress. And I don't think Abby is here, but she is the person from the World Resources Institute that spent years of her life making sure that this happened. And let me give you another example, a little bit more current to the situation today. The responsible energy movement, the responsible energy transition, has been facing a lot of issues. We have seen CEOs get laid off. We have seen stocks go up and down. We have seen a lot of things that are just responding to whatever the world is happening. And one of the key questions that is in people's minds right now is, are we 10 years back where we have to justify that renewables are actually the right way forward from a business perspective? That's how far we have gone in this conversation. And what I can tell you is that the reality is that many of these companies are still going strong, even if it's not just on offshore wind in all of the renewable. There are markets that are still very willing to work with them, but there is a need for those spaces to have those conversations and to have the conversations between the private sector, the investors, and the government to make sure that that signal remains strong, that the investments keep flowing, and that honestly we keep seeing why this transition started in the first place. So those are just two very...
Well, I want to come back to that because I think it's really important. But first of all, Louis, let me bring you in. You had said something in your notes which really struck me, that more has been achieved for the ocean in the past 3 years than in the previous 30 years, I think. How do you measure that? Why is that? Where do you see that?
Yes, thank you. That's my optimistic self, of course.
Yes, I want to know what it is, though.
I think, as we are, and we've heard it this morning and we'll hear it again, we're sort of sailing through dire straits, and when it comes to multilateralism. But in many ways, the ocean agenda has almost been going countercurrent when we see all the challenges we see in other areas of work. You know, we've had the BBNJ, we've had the Coming Montreal and the 30 by 30 target. We're working on the plastics treaty, of course. We had the WTO subsidies agreement. All these things came up in a situation that is sort of increasingly worrying. So that was sort of my message of hope, but also as we work towards UNOC 3, and as Peter said, my call to stick to the course. You know, there's a saying that says, when the wind don't blow, take to the oars. And I think that's what we need to do now. We really need to collaboratively take to the oars and get us through the dire straits, back to the trade winds. And I think we can do this. I think we've laid the foundations with all this great multilateral progress on the ocean agenda to take it forward.
Okay.
So that's sort of where it came.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about what the Oceano Azul has been doing itself, because I think you've been doing some very interesting work.
Sure. Because we're talking about collaboration and partnerships, I think I want to acknowledge the fact that at the foundation, at the Oceano Azul Foundation, partnership is at the very heart of everything we do. We're a bit like Liverpool fans. We never walk alone because it doesn't work otherwise. These partnerships are very much needed, and we apply this in different fields. One example I want to bring up is the Blue Azores project that our chief scientist will tell us more about in other panels, so I'll try not to spoil too much of the discussion, but still. These projects brought together the Waite Institute, the Oceano Azul Foundation, and the regional government of the Azores to work for the past 5 years, and ultimately now bringing us to the creation of a new network of marine protected areas in the Azores, which has become the largest in the North Atlantic, the largest in Europe. It's about 300,000 square kilometers. And that's, I think it's very important to note, is about 5% of the 30 by 30 target for all of Europe. And this happened thanks to 3 key ingredients in that partnership. It's that it was science-based. We always start with the science. I don't think there's any other way around. So luckily in the Azores there was already a lot of data thanks to the great research institutes there. But we also went on to do some scientific expeditions to complete the knowledge gaps. The second ingredient is political buy-in, inevitably. And the third that we're concerned with today is having collaboration by design. I think if you open the app of this event, you might have a pop-up about the Blue Azores project. We can, of course, open, and you can also look at the website. And if you open this, you will see a map of this new network of marine protected areas. The truth is that map really is 17 maps. It's an extensive consultation from all the different entities that are concerned by these MPAs that came together through very long and intense discussions to finally boil it down to this final map. And one example is that about 2/3 of the areas chosen were proposed by the fishing sector, which I think is a good indication of working together. And the other example I want to build on is what we have the pleasure to work on with Pascal Lamy and Jacques Delors Institute, is the Ocean Pact. The Ocean Pact, the European Ocean Pact, came from the realization that although Europe is an inherently maritime continent, and it's an ocean union, but it's an ocean union without an ocean policy. And what we try to do with the Ocean Pact is bring this ocean policy that would finally, building on all the great work of the Starfish mission, bring all the different dimensions together, from environment to blue economy to security, defense, geopolitical strategies. And the point I want to raise there in our work is the need for collaboration within our decision makers. I was quite saddened as I work on this project to see that next week there will be a debate at the European Council, so with all the heads of states and governments of the European Union. And for the first time ever, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but for the first time ever, the ocean is one of the agenda items. But recently...
That's really rather incredible that it's the first time ever,
Sorry?
isn't it? I'm just saying it's rather incredible that it's the first time.
Right? I mean, I think here I'm preaching to the choir. It's so obviously important to discuss this at the highest level of governance that it's quite striking. But what is even more striking is that we still saw some member states trying to push this agenda item out of it, because probably of a lack of understanding of how interconnected the issue is, how important it is to put the ocean front and center, even in this very complex moment. And that's maybe partly due to the still lack of collaboration within decision makers. Breaking the silos, we've heard it. It's from the UNCLOS all the way to the BBNJ. It was there before I was born. We all talk about it. I think we've made great strides. But there's still a lot for us to do to really implement this and bring all these little bubbles together. Not bursting them, but putting them together as real bubbles do, when you really compact them together, they kind of merge. Which
yes.
is beautiful.
Well, I think it's time to grasp the nettle, or, I don't know, use another metaphor, confront the elephant in the room. And that is, of course, some of you have alluded to it, the arrival of the new Trump administration in Washington, the dramatic change of course in all sorts of policy areas that we're seeing, including, of course, completely different attitude towards oil and gas production, pulling out of Paris again. And of course, that poses at least a question to a lot of the framework of the conversations that I had around the ocean. So, Peter, this is something you must spend quite a lot of time thinking about. What does this mean for the agenda this year, in particular, to have this dramatic shift taking place in Washington?
I think Louis summed it up quite nicely. Get out the oars. But look, seriously, I'm old enough now to have had the pitfalls in life, right? I mean, you start off as a young person and you think everything's going to be rosy. 1 year into my first year in civil service, for most of you, apart from Pascal, were born, I had a giant hurricane come through the district that I was responsible for. The bridges were taken out. 5 years of development was swept away in one night. What did we do? Did we sit down and cry endlessly? No, you get up and you try harder. And look at the district now. It's actually been through several more hurricanes, but it's thriving. So the same thing. We know what our course is, right? Some people will fall by the wayside. In this case, a country for a few years. Let them fall by the wayside. The rest of us, we just try harder. There's no way that this alters our course. We know where the havens lie, because we trust in science. It's just a question of how we get there. It's tough, but we're heading towards an equitably electrified world based on renewable energy. That's where we're heading. And, when I bought myself last year a Chinese-made electric car here in Melbourne, people said I was crazy. But there is nothing in my mind or any kind of logic which would ever take me back to owning a gas-guzzling, petrol-burning vehicle of any sort. It's just so convenient to have an electric car. I mean, we are so beholden to the status quo and the powers that be. And that's why I love speaking to young people, Daniela. And, I do hope that, young people understand that they are the consumers of the future, and it's their changes, saying no to petrol cars forever, that will change. So consumer power is very important. Youth power is very important, and we're not going to give up on this. We just, as Churchill said during the Second World War, and everybody was abandoning them, it's the courage to continue that counts, and we're all just going to continue what we're doing because we know what the right thing is to do. And so,
that's brave. That's brave words. I like, Peter Churchill, I think we'll have to call you from now on.
No, it's not that, Dan. I mean, the thing is, it's not just hot words. I mean, just look around, The plastic is mounting. I go to countries where the highest land in the country is plastic rubbish heaps. I won't mention the country, but a huge mountain in a flat country, and that's the highest mountain. Plastic. There's going to be more plastic than fish in the sea by 2050. Coral is dying around us, and how can you have a healthy planet without coral? You can't, because 25% of marine biodiversity is tied up in coral. No healthy ocean, no healthy planet, no healthy humans. You just look around, the evidence is so compelling that to not take the action that's been set out for us by science and has been agreed in the form of the SDGs and the Paris Climate Agreement, it's just madness, But as I say,
Peter, I'm sure everybody that you're talking to in this room would agree with you, but I'm curious to know whether in your work now and in preparing for the Nice summit, this is changing the conversation in any way, or the way that you have to navigate or negotiate this path?
No, it doesn't. You know why it doesn't? Because we're all part of the problem. And all it means is that we look into ourselves harder and we try harder to correct the problems which we have created.
Okay, very well noted. Would anybody else like to? Daniela, yeah.
No, I definitely would love to echo a lot of what Peter said, and just to also provide some tangible examples, right? So when you have an entire generation that doesn't have to be convinced that we are in a crisis, but rather that it's living day by day wondering if they're actually going to have a future. And I think most people don't understand that that is exactly the attitude and the belief system of this next generation. They don't really have egos about titles or career progression or, you know, what's mine or what's yours, because they don't know if they're going to have a home to live in or a future, right? So when we think about mentalities and value system, right, there's an entire generation that is, frankly, scared out of their minds because they don't know what is going to happen, and yet they're also feeling the urgency that a lot of people are not feeling in different forums. They're feeling the sense of responsibility because they're taking it upon themselves to go out and build solutions, right? They could be doing any career that they choose, but they're actually planting coral reefs, right? Restoring mangrove forests, right? Advocating to protect the ocean. So I think that we do have to leverage and support and empower this next generation, because they are the stakeholders that we can rely on to truly be that transformational change, right? From being advocates in policy meetings, right? To being entrepreneurs and so forth. So that's one area. That's one really important stakeholder piece. The other piece, which we talked about in an earlier session, is entrepreneurs. And one very beautiful collaboration that we're seeing is being able to provide technology access grants to young leaders to bring technology that entrepreneurs have to their local communities. Right? And when you think about this, a lot of these technologies, they may not be accessible to coastal communities or indigenous nations or just small fishermen. But if you have these grants and you have these youth leaders on the ground who are able to work hand in hand with the communities that are actually benefiting from this and the technologies, that's a tremendous win in terms of technology youth leadership, right? And then the other aspect that we need is we need intergenerational collaboration. Right? Every single person in this room should be a mentor to a young person, right? That's hungry and that wants to do something, right? How can we truly pass the baton, right? And work in collaboration in the time that is now. And I do want to give just a very brief shout out to The Economist, because I was actually a junior in college the first time I was invited on stage to speak about Sustainable Ocean Alliance at a conference here about 10 years ago. And that's just a great example of how you all believed in me as a young person, and now been able to build this global organization to empower thousands of young people to do the same.
Thank
you.
Thank you. Gracious of you to remember. Pascal, you wanted to come in.
I do not believe that this new US stance will derail the trajectory we've been building for the last 10 or 15 years. I think it will slow it, but not derail it. Now, slowing it is a problem, because as we know,
it needs to speed up.
Absolutely, we are in a crisis moment, and a few more years will make things worse. But I do not think it will derail. The area in my starfish five-leg strategy, I think the area where there is the most vulnerability is science. The US is a very big, serious provider of ocean science, like the EU, combining space observations, in situ observation. They've got fantastic labs. If this is dry during 5 years, we will have a big problem. And I'm building on the example of what happened during Brexit. When the UK left the European Union...
Why did you have to bring that subject up? For this
I'm not taking side. I'm just looking at what happened. The UK, who was an integral part of the EU research and development program, exited the program during 5 years. They are back now. during these 5 years, the amount of evaporation of teams, of collaboration, of deep research, which has totally vanished, is a big problem, and we will take time before we fix this. So if you put this at the side of the US in ocean science in global, in my view, this is the most dangerous, and we can see that in sort of...
And obviously, when on the theme of collaboration, science is archetypical.
Absolutely. I mean, nothing in science, in the ocean science, nothing happens without putting people who, from biology to climate to space, I mean, to sound, this is, in my view, where there is a real big danger. And no surprise that in the Stand Up for Science movement, which we see growing, a lot of people having to do with water, the hydrosphere, are on the front line.
So I want to come to questions, if we have questions from the from any of you for our panel. Are there any questions at the moment?
Post-podium.
Scared you into action.
There's one over here, yes. There's a right at the side here. And if you could say who you are, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Faye. I'm from the Sargasso Sea Commission Secretariat, and I found this panel's perspectives really interesting. So thank you. My question is about advocacy versus collegiality. This is something that I think about a lot in my line of work. The Sargasso Sea Commission is more kind of about collaboration and working with governments and scientists, but then we're not an advocacy organization. But then I have people come up to me and say, why isn't the Sargasso Sea conserved already? You know, we've been doing this work for so long. So it's kind of like that balance between when should we be more ambitious and perhaps aggressive with advocacy versus when should we follow these international processes that are sometimes very slow. Just something that I struggle with, and I wonder if you have any specific examples of when one should be used over the other or how they can coexist. Thanks.
Lewis, do you want to take that question?
Yes, rapidly. If we look at UNOC 3, as this is our big target, you have the One Ocean Science Congress. There's a collegiality of scientists coming together to deliver a strong message. We'll have the BEF, the Blue Economy and Finance Forum. That's the economic and the financial sector collegiality bringing up. And I think these collegialities should bring the advocacy towards the third group, let's say, that will be sitting during the UNOC 3, which are the decision makers. And so these collegialities in themselves, I think, can easily and should, at that occasion, turn into advocacy to make sure that the same collegiality can happen between decision makers. And that's already happening, of course, in the preparation of the declaration in New York, but nothing prevents member states to go beyond and take additional collaborative actions and commitments. And that's definitely where it should be brought up.
Okay, thank you. There's a question about halfway back there. Yeah. A bit further forward, yes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Emily Howgate with World Benchmarking Alliance. And sort of picking up on some of the themes about advocacy that just came in then and what the panel was talking about, I'm interested in what are some of the unusual suspects for collaboration? Who are maybe some of the voices, maybe not on either on the margins or the edges that might not be our natural alliances, but actually some sort of interesting friction could come in to sort of push the edge forward. So any examples that you have from your own work of those unusual alliances that have perhaps surprised you?
It's a nice teasing question. Does anybody have an example they want to... An improbable alliance. Peter, yeah.
Can I suggest you ask Alfredo that question? Because he was at the Honiara summit with me a couple of weeks ago in the Solomon Islands, where, by the way, the theme was, you meet together. That is pidgin for all of us together. We work it out together. Now, why am I asking Alfredo to speak to that in answer to that question? it's because you would not usually regard RFMOs, regional fisheries management organizations, as helpful in a world where we're overfishing by 37% of global fish stocks. But Alfredo will tell you that it was a very successful summit because all the RFMOs were present there with the member states. Please, over to you.
Okay, Alfredo, that's your setup.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. You are making me say the hard parts of this, so that's the ones that will get me on the fire. So we have been working on a 30 by 30 ocean action plan that Peter has commissioned through the Friends of Ocean Action. That is a community of ocean champions that really try to push for some of the critical moments and some of the critical targets that we have. And one of the really big questions that people are asking right now is, what about OECMs? Should we be even considering them to get to the 30 by 30 target? And well, the CBD...
OECMs, can you
OECMs,
translate?
other effective conservation measures. Well, the CBD kind of already gave us an answer, right? They said yes under these conditions. And the conditions are strict. And the conservation community at large, I will dare to say, that doesn't like it. But so the question that Peter has been posing to us is, well, what about the RFMOs? If we are going to protect the high seas, if we are going to use all of the instruments that we have available, can we actually do it without considering OECMs and the role that RFMOs can play in this? And I'm guessing the reason why you want me to talk about this is because precisely this is a dialogue that we need to have. This is an unexpected partnership. The RFMOs are stepping up. The one in the North Atlantic is really trying to say, I am going to be the first one that is going to make this work. I'm going to work with whoever I need to work with, and I'm going to make this happen. And so the question now for the rest of you is, this is an improbable collaboration. Are you willing to come to the table and make this work?
Thank you. Well, thank you for that really interesting question. We're out of time, so I have to bring it to the end there. But I think that's been an extremely valuable conversation, putting this year in context and both top-down, bottom-up, and also, I think, staring full in the face of the challenges that we have in this particular moment. So thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.